everybody, time for another Midweek Connect. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I am kind of a cheapskate or a spendthrift. What I like to do is I like to find something on sale or find a deal, and I like to buy that, and then maybe I can buy two things for the price of one, or I can always use that extra money for something, right? What happens though? And you might have heard the same thing I've heard. You always get what you pay for, Adam. And what does that mean? Well, usually if you don't spend enough money on something or you get it a little too cheap, what that means is it might not be the quality that you're hoping for. And what ends up happening? Well, you either have to buy a second one and it costs the same amount as if you just bought the right thing in the first place, or you have to buy the right thing the second time and you end up spending more money sometimes, right? So the point of that is that it doesn't pay off in the end. You should do the right thing for the right price. It calls to mind a story that Jesus shares in Matthew 7. And he talks about how a foolish man was trying to build his house, but he built it on sand. And so we can imagine what would happen with that. And then a wise man, he built his house on rock, and because that's solid. Now, I don't know how often you've been to the beach, but if you've ever stood in the sand as the waves might have come up and they washed over your feet and they went back down into the water, you might remember how that happened, what happened there. Your feet begin to sink into the sand. And the same thing begins to happen if you were to build a house on sand. Whereas if you built it on a rock, certainly you could build it as tall as you wanted to and that sort of thing because it's not going to wash away. If you're building your house on sand, it doesn't matter what kind of stone you use on the sand, something's going to happen. Just like what happens with your feet, it washes away. When we moved into our house, we had these bricks laying around all over the place. They're big bricks. They're bigger than the normal brick. They're about 1.5 the size of a normal brick. And even though these bricks are big and they're solid and they are heavy, you could try to build a house or a wall on there on sand. Doesn't matter. Sooner or later, that water is going to wash that sand out from under it. It's going to fall flat. If we think about this even in our own life, when I was looking at my house to purchase it, I looked at the foundation. I wanted to see if it was solid. I wanted to see if it was firm. I wanted to see if my family would be safe. I wanted to see if this house was going to last. And as I walked down into the basement, if I'd walked down there and there was no concrete, there was no blocks, there was no poured cement, there was nothing, it was just a bunch of dirt or sand, I probably wouldn't have bought the house. Why? Because there's no telling how long it's going to be until that dirt washes out or that sand washes out, even if it's not on a beach. Sooner or later, if there's a big rain, some of that dirt's going to wash out, or over time it's going to erode, and what's going to happen to the house? It's going to fall in on itself. It's not going to last. It's going to go just for a little while, and it may be nice. And on the outside, it may look fantastic. The house might be freshly painted. It may be a brick house even, but if the foundation goes, all is for naught, and you're not going to have that safety, true safety and security that you're wanting to have for your family. Really, the story that Jesus is telling is not really about sand or bricks or stone or rocks and that sort of thing. Really, what his story is about is for those of us who follow Christ, we should be assessing our life. What was important to Jesus, and is that important to us? There's nothing wrong necessarily with having a nice home, and maybe even sacrificing so you can have a nice home. There's nothing wrong with having a nice car, nice TV. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but if it takes your passion away from Him and you're working so hard and focusing all of your energy into having these things that will, as a friend puts it, that our focus shouldn't be on things that will rust, bust, or gather dust. If we're focusing all of our attention on these things and we're neglecting the kingdom work that He has set for us, what we're doing is we're building our house on temporary things and not on the eternal matters of Christ. And we're building our house on sand and not on the solid rock. And see, believers, we need to think about this ourselves. This is not something that we all don't struggle with. I mean, we all want what someone else has. We all want to achieve success to some varying degree, but in our Western culture, sometimes that can draw our attention away from the things that are eternal, the things of Christ, and focus us on the things of this world. You can have a nice house. You can have a nice car. And if it's available, I encourage you to take part in it. But don't let that be the focus of your heart. Why? It's not the focus of Christ's heart. And so how does it become the focus of our heart? And where do we get off kilter with that? Sometimes it appears that we feel more comfortable with building a kingdom ourselves instead of taking part in His kingdom. And what that means is that we're more comfortable with building a temporary kingdom to ourselves as opposed to adding on to or being a part of the long-lasting legacy, the eternal legacy that Christ has already established. So today, if we really look at this idea of you get what you pay for, where are we spending our life? Are we spending it on temporary things that are wash away? Are we spending it on eternal matters that will stand forever? See, our life should be focused on this, and I believe that's the challenge for the day, is to sit back and say, where am I spending my life? Where am I spending my passions? Because at the end of our life, we're going to get what we paid for. Are we spending it on something that's fleeting and will be gone? Or are we spending it on something that's eternal? That's their challenge for today. And I encourage us all to take time to assess that and look at our life and see where God may want us to make some adjustments. And I know this is challenging, and I hope it's challenging. It's challenging for me as well. But my hope is that we don't stay where we are, but we continue to grow and get better. And so today, that's our challenge, and that's my hope for you today. And I hope to talk to you soon. Take care.